Okay, what is going on, everyone? Darkside Phil here, and welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series, where I give you maximum truth and minimum bullshit regarding the latest video game releases. And today, we're going to be talking about a game that, it's a shame. It's a shame when you get an outing like this, because this is a development studio that was very well known, that was actually held in very high regard for their previous work. And so people kind of give these studios who are known for that the benefit of the doubt. And they're like, okay, I know these guys, they've made several good games, so, oh, this is their new outing, they're trying something different, I'm going to jump on and I'm going to try it. And when that happens, things can go one of two ways. You can either have a really cool, original, fun outing that's different from the original game that they made, and a lot of people like, or you could come up with what happened in this case. Today we're going to be talking about Insomniac Games' latest outing, a cooperative third-person shooter called Fuse. Now, at its premise, if you really think about what the game's about plot-wise, it actually sounds pretty interesting. So you're in the future. You are a group of 4 mercenaries who are for hire, basically. You get hired by a mysterious third party who you don't know who it is, and you get sent into this basically kind of military base to infiltrate and find out what's going on with some kind of a rumored bioweapon. When you get there, you find out that there is this bioweapon called Fuse, and it's never really fully explained the technological or scientific aspect behind it, but basically through some kind of bioengineering, there is this substance called Fuse that can be used to create different things that could be way different. Like, for example, if a human injects it into their body, they could become superhuman and have crazy, like, amazingly strong powers, maybe even get, like, psychic powers. If you put it into armor, the armor can become like a super-powered Iron Man suit that has abilities to shoot plasma weapons and stuff like that. If you put it into a crossbow, the crossbow can become an amazingly powerful sniping tool where the bolts can actually become incendiary ammo and burn people all around it. So, basically, Fuse can be whatever it's manipulated to be through genetic engineering. And so the premise is, originally you're going in to find out what's going on with this bioweapon. Through the course of the game, different hands get involved. There's a couple twists and turns in the plot regarding who's actually behind everything. And then there's a final showdown at the end of the game. All of it is very cliche. Never are you really going to say, oh, wow, this plot is original and stands out in this regard. In fact, really the only original thing about the game is the Fuse, component per se. So, if that's the case, then it's a typical sci-fi setting and whatever, then what is the gameplay like? Well, the best way that I can categorize Fuse is a drop-in, drop-out, 4-person cooperative third-person shooter game that plays very similarly to a combination of certain things, but the thing that I would probably equate it most to is Gears of War. And when I say that, I mean, even a lot of the buttons from the Gears of War do the same thing. If you hold down A, you'll run exactly the same way that you run in Gears of War. The whole, cover mechanic kind of thing, exactly the same as Gears of War. Where it doesn't have here is the melee aspect. It does have melee combat, but it's very simplified. It's not like Gears where you can get instant executions and such. Although the game does have a stealth element to it that Gears doesn't have. There will be parts of the game where instead of just running and gunning, you do want to sneak into an area and attempt to maybe stealth assassinate a few dudes over cover before someone gets alerted, and eventually all the guards charge in to fight you. But outside of that, it's pretty much standard third-person shooter fare. You'll be going from point A to point B, taking cover, killing hundreds and hundreds of repetitive enemies, most of which actually look almost identical in this game, which I don't understand why they couldn't have more variety in how the enemies look, but I guess that's their decision in the graphical design of the game. And you'll be using your standard assault rifle, your standard sniper rifle, your standard shotgun. You'll find grenades over the course of the game, just like every other third-person shooter. Now, the only unique aspects of the game come in 2 forms. First of all, you always have 4 players in your party. So unlike other third-person shooters where, okay, well, if you have 4 people, there's 4 people you're playing with, but then, there's not if you don't have full 4 players. You will always have 4 players playing together. 3 of them will be AI controlled if you're playing single player, and of course, subsequently, the more humans you add, the more AI you add, or the less AI you have in the game. And you can actually choose to just float between those players if they're not controlled by humans on the fly. All you have to do is hold the back button and then press the appropriate face button. You'll jump into the body of the other person. Now, each character has their own unique ability, and this is the second reason why the game is a little bit unique. One character has a gun that freezes enemies in this crystalline kind of form. This is supposed to be the gimmick, is everyone has a different fuse-powered gun, okay? So one character can freeze you in crystal, and then if you shoot them again, they'll die instantly, they'll break apart. One character creates a black hole, wormhole warp that kind of sucks people in and then blows up. One character has a crossbow that you can use for sniping, but the bolts later on become incendiary and actually spread fire across a group of people who are near the bolt. And then finally, the last guy has a gun that has a shield in front of it that, number one, protects him from damage and stops bullets, but number two, if your teammates shoot through the shield, it actually makes their bullets more powerful. Now, as you go through the game, you'll get experience for killing people, you'll get experience for getting from point A to point B and completing objectives, but you'll also get experience for finding random items throughout the world. So there's three kinds of items. There's an experience power-up, which never really explained what it is. I guess it's supposed to be like a canister of fuse that gives you bonus experience if you find it. There's piles of gold bullion, and I'm not like exaggerating, it's just piles of gold bars that you find that actually give you fuse currency, and we'll talk about what that does in a second. And then there's intel that gives you some backstory on what's going on in the game, and those give you a 500-point experience boost as well, but also usually gives you a text log or an audio log that gives you more of an insight into the backstory of the game. Now, as you level up and you find these items, you can do two things. You can use the experience to unlock new abilities in your skill tree. So the game does have a little bit of an RPG element to it where you can customize your character per what you're upgrading in the skill tree. This is very similar, I want to say, to Borderlands or Borderlands 2 in that skill tree aspect. In fact, you can go one way and make your character like a medic, or maybe instead you want to focus just primarily on offensive powers. So you can do that depending on which character you're actually leveling up. And keep in mind, like I said, you can jump between the characters if you don't have a full 4-human player party, and therefore you can actually have the ability to level up each character, so if you jump into them, you can use their unique abilities. Now, the other form of currency and leveling up is called the fuse points, which I mentioned. Now, what these are points spent to unlock team-based buffs, which will affect your entire team. So there may be a buff. Entire team has a 10% damage increase. Entire team will now find 15% more fuse ammo when you go to a canister or whatever, when you find the ammo. So it's team-based buffs. Again, it's very similar to Borderlands, where your whole team could get a buff based off of which one you unlock. And those you need to buy with the fuse currency. So what I've just described to you in the past 5 minutes is the only uniqueness to the game. You control 4 characters, you can jump between them, and each one has a unique ability. So, similar to Borderlands in that respect, but the gameplay is very reminiscent to Gears of War. And when I say that, I mean, when you play this game, you feel like you're either playing Borderlands or Gears of War. Never at one point do you ever say, oh, this is a unique experience, and I'm, look at all the cool stuff in it, and the nice combination, and the narrative, and everything working together to make a unique work. It never feels like that. It literally feels like someone cut a chunk out of this game, cut a chunk out of that game, took a piece of tape, taped them together, and here's Fuse. So that's the problem with Fuse, is that it never really has its own identity. It really does feel like you're playing other people's work that was just kind of ripped out and hashed together. The main problem with Fuse is that it is insanely repetitive and boring in most parts. And let me explain what I mean. Yes, there is the fact that if you're playing this game with lots of people, if you have a full 4-player party, okay, you will find this game entertaining. Similarly, how, like I said previously this year, Dead Island Riptide. This game is a co-op game. It's made to be a co-op game. If you play this game as single player, it's going to probably be very boring. If you play it with more people, the better it will feel. But that doesn't change the fact that this game is an endless, repetitive grind, and literally the game's major focus is primarily on repetitive third-person shooter gameplay rather than trying to do anything original or interesting. You will find probably about 50 times during the game, you enter a room, okay, there's some guards. They all look exactly the same. So you get a headshot on one. Uh-oh, that alerts the others. Everyone takes cover. You kill a wave of enemies. You move up, more enemies come out. You kill that wave, more enemies come out. You kill that wave, more enemies come out. Okay, you've completed the room, move to the next area. Oh wait, let's loot the room. So you run around the empty room looking for all those hidden items that I mentioned, and then you move on to the next room. Wash, rinse, repeat. there's very few times during the gameplay where it's varied. There's one boss fight that's very odd and out of place because it actually feels like a boss fight from a different style of game, and it doesn't even make sense that it's really in the game. Outside of that, everything else is just, oh, I'm shooting a giant mech for a boss and I have to shoot its glowing weak point. Okay, and it's just wash, rinse, repeat, tried and true, the same shit you've done in other games. And that's really where I feel that this game goes off the rails. Because when you are a development studio known for a line of games, and that line of games was pretty original and interesting and actually had a really good run, and you say, we're going to delve into something new, you can either take a chance and try to do something new and interesting, or you can do what they did with Fuse and play it completely fucking safe. No risks were taken in the making of this game. It's literally elements from other games that were successful slapped together. The problem being, it's not interesting, it's not very fun. The only fun you'll really get in the game is, again, the camaraderie between you and your friends if you're playing it with multiple people. If you're playing this by yourself, you're going to be bored to fucking tears. If you're playing it with only one other person, even still, the game feels like a major fucking grind most of the time, rather than you caring about getting to the next objective because the story's progressing, or maybe because you really like the characters, or because the gameplay is fun and addicting. It's not. It's none of that. It's just you feel like you're doing gameplay for the sake of gameplay just to get through the game. And that's the problem with Fuse. You shouldn't have a game that feels so boring and repetitive that it feels like a job or work rather than actually having fun playing the game. Yes, there are some challenging parts, but are they challenging because, ooh, here's a new enemy type and we need to figure out what its weakness is to kill it? No, it's because they throw 400 of the same generic fucking enemy at you wave after wave after wave after wave, to the point where you just want to throw your fucking controller down and say, I need a 10-minute break because I'm tired of killing the same fucking shit over and over. This is boring the fuck out of me. And that's a shame, because here was an opportunity for this studio to really jump out and say, listen, we're not a one-trick pony. We can do a different style of game. We can add our own unique elements and ideas to a unique style of game. And here they are. Instead, they literally just copy other people and try to make a game that's a mishmash of other successful game engines, and it's not. It's just a miserable failure. Now, the campaign of Fuse is 6 missions that each can run anywhere from about an hour to an hour and a half long. So really what you're talking about is a game that could be about 8 to 10 hours long, depending on your pace, depending on what difficulty you select and how good you are at a third-person shooter. Now, there are several achievements and trophies in the game that are similar to say, oh, we'll completely level up your character, make them max out their skill tree. You can't do that in one playthrough, because there's only a limited number of enemies that you can get, and even if you're getting constant headshots and other kinds of fancy kills to get bonus experience when you kill people, it's not enough to max out your skill tree. So you have to play the game twice in order to actually get a lot of the achievements and stuff in the game. Problem being, that's your only incentive to replay the game. The game is not worth a second playthrough. It's boring as hell on the first one. Why would you want to go through and experience that again? Now, the game does also have an Echelon Mode. And what I should mention here, I do want to mention this, the game is only local co-op for 2 players. So if you only have 1 copy of the game, only 2 players can play on the same TV. The game does become 4-player co-op if you all play online. So I do want to clarify that for some people who may be figuring out, oh, I want to do a cooperative playthrough, but I want to figure out how I can do it. That's some critical information you're going to need, okay? Now, as I said, the game does have an Echelon Mode. An Echelon Mode, essentially what it is Horde Mode from Gears of War. The game sends repetitive waves of enemies at you over and over and over, and it's your challenge, it's kind of like an endurance match to survive this mode. And you actually, a lot of the, again, achievements and trophies of the game are built into this mode, where, oh, survive this wave or beat this, get to this level in Echelon Mode and you'll get a trophy or an achievement. The problem being, if you've touched the campaign before Echelon Mode, you're not going to have any desire to play it, because the campaign is such a repetitive grind of waves of enemy after enemy after enemy. Why would you then want to subject yourself to that again by playing Echelon Mode? You're basically playing Horde Mode during the campaign, and then you're playing the formal Horde Mode afterwards. The entire game, the 2 modes are almost identical, the only difference being that there's some story progression in campaign mode. So, no, Echelon Mode, even though they're shouting it, oh, it's this extra mode, so there's more replayability and gameplay, it's the same fucking gameplay. You're not going to want to ever touch Echelon Mode. So, Fuse, for me, A game that, again, if you just watch previews or whatever, you're not sure what it's like. You may think that because it's Insomniac Studios that this game has a chance because they've had a track record of excellence. They've completely thrown that out the window and basically shown, in my opinion, they are a one-trick pony. They had success with this one game line. They did real well with it, and they really just ran it into the ground, played it until it couldn't be played anymore, and then they said, let's do something different, and their first outing is a miserable flop. The game just screams mediocrity, boredom, average, combined elements from other games that were successful, unfortunately put it into a really boring package where your game just feels like you're grinding to get through it rather than you actually want to continue playing to get through it. Fuse is a mishmash of other successful games that do not come together to be a successful game, but comes together to be a boring mess. So Fuse is not a game that's horrible because it's functional, it works. Yes, you can get 8 to 10 hours of gameplay on your first playthrough. Yes, if you really like this repetitive style of gameplay, you can go into Echelon Mode and keep playing it with your friends. I'm sure if you do a full 4-player playthrough of it, you'll actually get more experience out of it, or more enjoyment out of it, than someone who plays it alone or with less people. And I hate to say it, if this game had come out a few years ago, it might have been a better game. And what I mean is, you wouldn't have had as many third-person shooters come out of the box trying to be like this. In this case, in 2013, with the economy being what it is, the fact that you cannot just drop money on every game out there, Fuse is just not good enough for your hard-earned dollar. The only reason I would even recommend Fuse to anybody, oop, I got a spider on my ceiling. The only reason I would recommend Fuse to anybody is if you were just desperate and looking for a game to play 4-player co-op with, okay? And it's that you don't care about what kind of game it is, you don't care about the gameplay, you just need to play a 4-player co-op game for whatever reason. It's a shame, because the game had massive potential. If you look at the previews, the game looks like it's unique and has massive potential, then you play it and you're like, oh, it's a clone. It's a fucking clone of other games that were better. And it's just a shame. So it's functional, it works, you'll get a decent amount of gameplay out of it, you just might not actually enjoy the gameplay that you're experiencing during that period of time. So I give Fuse a perfectly average score of 5 out of 10. Completely middle of the road. Is it good? No. Is it bad? No. It's functional, it works, it gives you a lot of gameplay, and there is some value for your buck. The problem is you probably won't be having fun while you're playing it, and isn't that the purpose of gameplay? Not to occupy you, not to kill time, not to be a repetitive grind, but to actually enjoy what you're doing. You won't really enjoy Fuse. And that's the worst part of the game, is that it's not fun. Okay, what a disappointing game, and I do apologize, because, you know, I really wanted this game to be good, and it just did not turn out to be anything near what expectations would be for a new game in this day and age. A $60 retail game that's this freaking repetitive and boring. So, alright, that's it. That's the Hateful Truth review of Fuse. I hope that you found it informative. I hope that now that you know about my honest feelings and gameplay experiences with the game, you know whether or not this is a game you want to check out. And I hope that you found that it was maximum truth and minimum bullshit. I didn't try to fluff it and kiss the game's ass or whatever. I really just tried to be honest about it with my review. So, thank you very much for tuning in to the Hateful Truth review series. I will see you next time for another honest review. Thanks a lot. Peace out.